I don't think Loki is ever gonna die. I am genuinely sure that at the end of the world, it is literally going to be a bunch of Wall-E robots and Loki just hanging around on Earth for some reason. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Hi, I'm Nina and it is time for our weekly Loki episode review. This episode is episode 4 of 6, the Nexus event, likely referring to all of the plot twists they threw at us during the episode, because it was a lot. I am confused. Okay, with regards to the sacred timeline, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Before I start reviewing the episode, I have a theory that I'm pretty confident is fact now, and it's not super relevant anymore, but I still want to talk about it though. So we found out that all of the workers at the TVA were actually variants under super heavy mind control and manipulation, right? I think that them working for the TVA is the only reason that they're taken out of the timeline in the first place. Because if the TVA has the ability to reset the timeline, then they should be able to reset the person to the point before that variance in the timeline occurred. In which case, the only reason why the TVA is even taking people out of the sacred timeline at all is so that they have an endless supply of workers, which is also why they're not all that concerned when hunters die. Because even when Sylvie was going out and ganking hunter teams, they weren't really upset that people were dying because they've depersonalized their hunters to the point of stormtroopers. Instead, they were worried that it meant that the variant itself was strong, possibly stronger than they could deal with. Okay, on that theory note, let's get into episode 4. Also make sure to like my video and comment your current theories regarding Loki, or the TVA, or the Timekeepers, or Lady Loki, i.e. Sylvie. We start the episode with a flashback to when Sylvie was stolen from Asgard for her crimes against the sacred timeline, with Ravonna Renslayer being the lead hunter who took her into the TVA. A very confused and scared little Sylvie gets processed through the TVA, but before her case is heard by the judge, she steals Renslayer's tempad and escapes. It also looks like her crime is existing as a girl, or just existing at all. Because if Sacred Timeline Loki is Tom Hiddleston Loki, then are there multiple versions of people that could exist but the TVA forces one? If somebody is pregnant and in the Sacred Timeline they're supposed to have a boy but they have a girl, is that baby arrested for crimes against the Sacred Timeline? Or I guess because Loki is gender fluid and canonically a shapeshifter, is it just that they were shapeshifted at the wrong time? And also, when the timeline is reset, are they making sure the correct version of the variant exists, or that that branch timeline doesn't exist at all? Because it just seems really odd that the branch timeline was only big enough for the TVA to notice when Sylvie was 6 to 8 years old. I can't tell children ages, but around elementary school aged. When the TVA reset that timeline, did they reset it to before girl Loki, Sylvie, was born on Jotunheim and rewrite it to Tom Hiddleston version of Loki? I also have another theory. We saw that Renslayer was a hunter before she was a judge, and presumably received her name after she became a judge. Is it possible that the variants that they take as adults, they just train as regular hunters, but the variants who they get younger, they train them to eventually become judges? Sort of like a you can only be trained in the Force if you're X years old kind of thing. We find out that it's Renslayer who is having the flashback in the elevator on her way to debrief the Timekeepers in their dark and foggy, misty room. After visiting them, Renslayer speaks to Mobius, who wants to speak with Hunter C-20 so that he can figure out what exactly Sylvie enchanted her to see. Renslayer claims that Hunter C-20 died because of mental deterioration due to Sylvie's enchantment, which is shady right off the bat because firstly, she seemed traumatized but fine, and secondly, nobody else has died from just Sylvie's enchantment. We then cut to Lamentis 1, where, as we expected, Loki and Sylvie get saved from certain doom on that planet by the Timekeepers, who find them when a Nexus event forms because they start to hold hands, which doesn't make sense if they're protected by an apocalypse. I know they said that they recalibrated the variance, whatever. No. I mean, they changed stuff on Lamentis 1 before that and nothing happened. Why would them holding hands be enough for a Nexus event to form? Also, I am saying right now, I do not agree with the self-cest And I am really hoping that that's not what Disney is going for with Loki and Sylvie. They really gave off sibling energy in the previous episode, so I'm not understanding where this Loki x Sylvie thing is coming from. We're not doing this. I'm hoping that what caused the Nexus event, as per a TikTok that I have accepted as my headcanon, that the reason why a Nexus event formed is because one or both of the Lokis still have some part to play on their sacred timeline, which would also explain why they still haven't been pruned. And or they made a decision about something that would affect the sacred timeline, possibly because they aren't going to be permanently pruned. After being brought back to the TVA by the Timekeepers, Loki tries to tell Mobius about what he learned from Sylvie, but Mobius refuses to hear him out and throws him into the time cell, where he goes through a time loop of Sif's reaction to the iconic mythological scene of Loki cutting off Sif's hair. He is repeatedly kicked and punched by Sif and told that he deserves to be alone. 2 mythology canon changes. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that this prank is something that Loki did when they were like children, or at least a lot younger. And also, just to make a note, Sif's hair is supposed to be blonde before he cuts it off. Like, the whole thing is that he cuts off her hair, either feels bad or he almost gets in trouble, goes to the dwarves to get them to create gold hair for her. Sometime during that situation, the dwarves screw him over and he gets his lips sewn shut. So I'm not saying that it was okay for him to do it, but he already kind of got his just desserts for that situation. Maybe pick a different one? Also, not that it makes the honestly very mean-spirited prank okay, but based off of the interactions between the Warrior 3 and Sif and Loki in the Thor movie, they weren't friends. Like, they were not friends. They were acquaintances at best. They were his brother's friends, and he just kind of had to hang out with them because he was with Thor all the time. They did not trust him at all during the Thor movie, even though he didn't appear to be doing anything wrong. Like, I know he was actually doing kind of semi-shady shit, like lying to Thor and telling him that Odin was dead, and like the whole bringing the Frost Giants into Asgard situation, but they didn't know that, and they literally committed treason against the person who was king of Asgard at the time, and no one said shit about it. My second question is, why is Loki so hung up on Mobius? I get that Mobius is the ally that Loki has with the TVA, but that man stays pissing me off. He's like a combination of every doctor that didn't believe you when you said you had a medical problem, and every teacher who didn't listen when you were being bullied or having trouble in school. I don't care if he's read about Loki's life. Considering how weird his life has gotten, he should at least give Loki a chance to explain without first putting conditions like, if you don't tell me something, you get pruned. If you tell me something, then you'll meet the Timekeepers. If you help me with this, then you won't get pruned. Da 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 da. Because he also, having read Loki's file, should know that Loki is opportunistic and he's going to tell Mobius what he wants to hear unless he knows that he's safe. Think about it. Mobius goes to ask Renslayer a couple of questions regarding Loki and Sylvie, and when she doesn't allow him to speak to Sylvie, he tries to see if he can sort of sneak in there, which is where he sees Hunter B-15, who is also having her own doubts about Hunter C-20's death. He pulls Loki out of the time cell to interrogate him on what caused the Nexus event, where nothing of note really happens except for, like, the man is good at mentally breaking people and or interrogation. He says that Loki and Sylvie being in love is weird and could break reality somehow, and he doesn't believe Loki when Loki reveals that all of the TVA are variants. And then he puts Loki back into the time cell for him to wait to be pruned. Now Hunter B-15 goes to Sylvie in her cell, taking Sylvie back to the apocalypse on Roxcart, where Sylvie shows Hunter B-15 what her life was like before she was stolen by the TVA. Meanwhile, Mobius goes back to Renslayer again to ask her further questions, and he doesn't get any reasonable answers of his own, but he is told that the Timekeepers want to personally see the 2 variants being pruned, meaning that he finally gets to meet them as well after possibly an infinity amount of time not ever having met them. However, he is still unsatisfied by this, so he waits for Renslayer to turn around before swapping her tempad with his own. Hiding in the archives, he discovers on Renslayer's tempad that Hunter C-20 was telling the Timekeepers or the other judges that she remembered the location that she was in Sylvie's enchantments before Renslayer herself shut down the interview, presumably murdering her to make sure that she stays quiet and doesn't tell anybody else in the TVA. Mobius goes into the time cell to rescue Loki and hopefully rescue Sylvie as well so that they can figure out what the hell is going on, but when they step out of the cell, they are met by Renslayer and a group of hunters because she became suspicious because he kept going back and asking her questions, and Mobius is unceremoniously pruned. But quite possibly not dead either, because Loki and Sylvie are taken to the Timekeepers. and they're almost pruned when Hunter B-15 shows up and saves the day. And turns the tide in their favor. So they beat up the other guards and they decapitate one of the timekeepers, only to find out that the timekeepers are all androids and being controlled by somebody else. Loki almost confesses something to Sylvie, and I'm hoping that that something is that he has realized he's not a monster and that he doesn't deserve to be alone. But before he can say anything, he's pruned by Renslayer. The episode ends with Sylvie holding Renslayer at disintegrator point and telling her to spill the beans on what is actually going on at the TVA. Meanwhile, in the after-credits scene, Loki wakes up to a destroyed cityscape with 4 Loki variants, Gator variant, old comic book variant, Kid variant, and possibly Thor variant? Giving him the Terminator, "come with me if you want to live" speech. And that is how the episode ends. Obviously, a lot happens in this episode. I think I speak for the entirety of the Loki fandom when I say that Disney had better be Ralph Bonering us with the Loki x Sylvie bakwas, because I am not here for it. Also, the timekeepers being androids is actually pretty smart when you think about it, because realistically the best place to hide advanced technology is in a place that looks like it's running on older technology. I also have some theories based off of TikToks that I have watched and things that I've read about on the Marvel wikis. Biggest and main theory, the leader of the TVA is actually Kang the Conqueror, a prominent enemy of the Avengers in the comics and Ravonna Renslayer's kind of boyfriend partner. The situation is kind of confusing actually. He's dead in one version of the timeline where she didn't die, but she died for him in the main timeline. But he also chose not to bring her back to life when he had the choice, and some other entity brought her back to life and told her that he didn't bring her back to life, so she became his enemy. It's confusing. But that would make the place the TVA is located Chronopolis, which is the future city that Kang the Conqueror and at some points Ravonna Renslayer rules, and the Hunters, his Anachronauts, who are literally warriors he plucks out of time and space to fight for him. This is also a pretty cool option because a younger version of Kang the Conqueror goes back in time to become Iron Lad for the Young Avengers, and we did see Kid Loki in the Pruning Afterlife, who is also a Young Avenger. Or, theory 2, Kang the Conqueror is a Mephisto Ralph Boner situation, and we have no idea who is in charge of the TVA. Or, and this is a crack theory, I have no idea, Mobius is a timekeeper. Why not? In fact, every named character is actually a timekeeper. Mobius, Casey, and Ravonna Renslayer are the real timekeepers. Or it's another Loki variant, just deciding to mess stuff up in the world and timeline, because why not? Why the hell not? He has nothing better to do. Like, it's a really bitter and dark version of Loki, so then it becomes Loki and Loki versus Loki at the end. Who knows? We'll find out tonight. And that is the end of this video. I hope you liked my video. If you did, please make sure to like and comment about anything in particular that you liked in my video or anything that you thought was like terribly wrong. Also, please make sure to subscribe for future content. Okay, bye!